thank you for joining us today. I'm going to move on to the next session of the day. And what I'm going to do today is just focus on towards me. It's not on.
Oh, yeah.
My session is going to focus in on the impact and use cases that we are seeing in the space of internal audit and assurance, how AI is being used. Two topics I'm going to focus on today, starting with bringing everyone up to speed with the latest trends. Artificial intelligence changes every single day, so I thought. Sorry? That's coming up next. Hey. Who are you? Just a random person. I get on to what I am. A section later on today by another speaker that's going to focus on the risk, the ethics, the considerations around artificial intelligence. So that part of my session, I'm not going to spend too much time. But first question: who are you? This is me. Alex Taras. I'm a director at Activity. Activity, we're a consulting firm. We specialise in assuring risk and digital transformation. I spent my entire career on the consulting side. I've worked with numerous organisations to help them get the most out of technology, get the most out of data. But by trade, I studied computer science at the University of Leeds. Techie by trade, programming, using artificial intelligence. I don't know how I ended up in the world of internal audit. I somehow stumbled into the wonderful world of computer-assisted audit techniques. I started my career using technologies like ACL, an idea to help auditors and second line to mitigate risks, understand how controls are being performed, data-driven as well. As I said, my background really is in artificial intelligence, and I'd say in the first part of my career, I really struggled to understand why I've really seen many audit functions, second line functions, adapting to. And over the years, I discovered that was because there was a big gap. In order to go towards artificial intelligence, machine learning, or other emerging technologies, you'd have to take a step forward to understand exactly how these tools and technologies in what you do day in, day out. I'm going to focus on some of the developments over the past few years, but that all boils down to why I'm seeing audit functions using more AI, and that's purely down to accessibility. So you have to be a specialist. You have to know how to code, to use data science techniques in what you do day in, day out. Now it's as simple as asking the right prompts and getting the right answer. Maybe a few suspicious people in the room, you may not want to scan a QR code. That QR code will take you to my LinkedIn page. So I will be here for the rest of the day. Do feel free to ask any questions, or more than welcome to connect with me. Now, I tend to do these sessions quite often to mixed audiences. Hopefully, I don't have to spend too much time explaining some of the topics. We heard from John earlier on generative AI, machine learning, a few topics that I'm going to expand on a bit further in this session, two of which are large language models. Probably the best example there, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Grok, and others. So essentially, models, AI models that predict the next word based on the prompts. I'm also going to focus on agentic AI, probably the next big term that many of you to me, agentic AI, I give a model a task. That model will break that task into problems, and then it will iterate on that problem. That's the next iteration of robotics, so robotic process automation. The model in the background. I'll put that later on. Some of these models could be a simple flow in the background with some reasoning. not just the decision model, but the AI model in the background, trying to work out what should do next. In other cases, more advanced agents, especially some of the ones that I've developed, actually control your machine. So I could ask it to perform a task in the same way that I would do as a human, and in a way, it's replacing what I would do. Some of the trends that I'm seeing in the market, and some big numbers here you can see, many assumed that the AI and the impact of ChatGPT was going to create a bubble. I haven't seen that bubble burst yet. Did potentially see that happening a few months ago with DeepSeek and the impact that had, at least on the stock markets. But I'd say from speaking to many of your peers and understand exactly how many organizations are adopting artificial intelligence, probably it's a bubble. And again, I'm quite biased. One big thing that I've seen in terms of adoption is integration into existing technologies. That goes back to the accessibility point I made earlier. So not having to code in Python, for example, or COBOL to use these tools and technologies. As we'll see in a second, some of the examples of the use of artificial intelligence are already embedded in your tools and technologies. So maybe as a quick show of hand, how many of you have used generative AI, not just in your work role, but just personally? Great. When I asked that question this year, I would say about 1 out of 10 raise their hand. How many of you are you using AI in your day-to-day work? Portion, and how many of you are using tools and technologies that are available off the shelf? 50%. That's great. So hopefully, some of the things that I'm going to cover are things that you've already seen. In terms of problems that we are seeing many organizations, not only from a risk and audit perspective, is how do we automate, how do we become more productive, and how do we ensure that we are applying AI in the right areas, in the areas that we need support, in the areas that are quite heavily manual, trivial, that we could easily offload to multimodal models. So many of the examples that we've seen predominantly up until now, and I think the ChatGPT, take text as inputs and then outputs as text. But multimodal models allow us to interact with many different types of inputs. So whether that's audio, video, both of inputs and outputs. And I'll show you some examples. There's a lot to be said on ethics, controls, policies that need to be in place to ensure that we mitigate the risk. Small chart that I've produced here that just highlights some of the major models, and I haven't captured every single one of them. When it comes to large language models, it starts with ChatGPT. November 2022 feels like a lifetime ago. Things that have happened since then. On the AI bandwagon, many organizations within the same realm, whether it's the likes of Google or Anthropic, each trying to outdo each other, coming out with newer models, improved models, models that have new features, capabilities. In some cases, some of the more recent models are able to reason, and we'll see some examples of reason in seconds. But without trying to use too much science behind this, the x-axis that I have there is around how complex or advanced or accurate these models are. Amalgamation of multiple different benchmarks. I mentioned DeepSeek a moment ago. When that came out in January earlier on this year, that had a big impact on the world of AI. Many seeing this as a different approach, a different way that organizations could build their own. I'm not going to comment too much on how DeepSeek came out with the model, but again, on that same trend, exponentially, or at least trying to improve on the models that came before them. I'm trying not to rank these organizations, these models too much. As of last week, I'd like to say Gemini 2.5 Ultra is probably the leading model, but as we can see, the general trajectory is upwards. Question?
Yep. What does speed and accuracy?
Yep.
On the same axis?
It's an amalgamation of multiple different benchmarks that I use. quite a few different benchmarks, one of which I'll touch on in a second. But they all tend to focus on either on the accuracy or how the models can recall content. In some cases, they may generate their own. In some cases, we may be measuring the cost that it takes to both train the model, so to generate the output. Or in some cases, we may be measuring how big the model is. So many of the new models even run on your iPhone, for example. So you don't need to have a large supercomputer that you are using. So again, it's a scientific chart. It's just an amalgamation, just show you the trend. And again, I haven't covered every single model. A common question I get quite often is, should we be going out and developing our own large language models, generative AI? Very similar to the cloud, you're probably not going to go out and build your own cloud. You will go with a third provider that already has a solution. Yes.
Why are you not including Copilot in there?
Copilot, again, haven't included every single one of them. I haven't included them here because I'm going to have an actual deep dive.
Okay, sorry.
So, great question. Any other missing models in there?
You're not doing everyone. No.
Absolutely. It 12 minutes to build that.
Oh, AI.
I should have used AI.
Do we trust it?
That's it. I mentioned quite a few benchmarks. Probably one of my favorite ones is Managed Class Exam, mainly because of the title. This is an amalgamation of multiple different topics, different themes that combine a collaborative effort, focusing on probably some of the hardest questions that humans have to answer. So over 1,000 subject matter experts, all experts in their domain that have come up with questions that are on a PhD level. Now, I did go through some of the questions. I'll show you an example of it earlier. I didn't solve a single one of them, mainly because I'm not an expert in those areas. But from a benchmark, in terms of human perspective, they don't appear, unless you are a multidisciplinary expert across these models. But as you can see here, as of last week, say this has changed, but as of last week, OpenAI's O3 model is able to answer over 20% of the questions on this benchmark. Now, these questions are not in the training data, so these models haven't been trained on the questions. They are looking at questions like this, for example, classics, and having to translate Latin or chemistry, case here. Not sure how many of you have studied the classics, or maybe a specialist in chemistry, but hand up there.
It's Latin, not
Latin.
not chemistry. Yeah, give me a few minutes though.
Sorry, how do you know it's not in the questions weren't in training data?
Because the experts have come up with a question after that. Now, at some point, obviously, the models will be trained on this benchmark. So the general trend that I'm seeing with all these benchmarks is within a few months, they are completely obsolete because the models are being trained. So Human's last benchmark, the experts are constantly coming up with new questions.
So you can't, so the run at one point is representative of the run last time because the questions are different.
Next section, what I'd like to do, and I know there's quite a few news topics, is just pick out some of the news articles that really caught my eye over I'd say last 18 months. Actually, this one here. I don't know how many of you, at least even last week, were in the meeting and you sat there and thought, I wish this was a me. CEO of Zoom, who are actively looking to create AI duplicates clones of yourselves that can join that meeting. They can just come out and say, this was what was discussed. So a bit of a combination of various different articles, both good, like this, see the negatives of that, but also negatives as well overall. Various different studies that have been made across various different roles, going with the healthcare sector here, and studies on GPs and GPs that are using the likes of ChatGPT, and overall seeing that they have better bed manners compared to using artificial intelligence. Some predictions here by the CEO of NVIDIA and Anthropic, both saying that certain skills that are being used today will be redundant. I definitely have seen that in what I do day in, day out. One of the recent examples I put to one of the new models by Anthropic was a activity that I did at university. I spent a whole weekend building Scrabble in Python, as well as a Scrabble solver, and spent writing. With the latest models, generative AI models, and in this case, Claude, I was able to develop that same code within seconds. So a lot of the skills that I developed over the years are becoming obsolete. See both positives of that. I can obviously produce code pretty much instantaneously, but the skills that I needed to develop and review that code are redundant. Again, the impact on individuals that are entering the work market today, a lot of the roles that they would have probably in the last 5 years are there.
It's not a question, it's a statement. My dad said in his generation, when computers and robots came out, they said, this is going to revolutionise the workforce. You're going to have 3-day working weeks. You're all going to have massive weekends and things. It never happened. And what it ended up doing was creating more work.
Yep.
And you can see the same messages and things being sent out around AI. Finance people love it because they think, oh, how can I cut half the workforce? Whereas what it should be used for is to do all the frivolous stuff, all the kind of admin stuff, get rid of all that and allow people to actually use their brains to do something which is more productive, think more, actually come up with better methods. That's how it should be used, not as a way of obliterating your workforce and saving money, which is a good idea. Yeah.
An official answer to that is capitalism. Any new development is going to be great. How can we do more? Personally, as a sample of one, I'm probably the busiest I've ever been, even though I'm using it day in, day out.
You did your Scrabble through using AI, and you mentioned code review. Did you use the same AI that had generated the code to review it? It's marking its own homework. Use a separate AI to review it. So you did check it.
I did check because obviously I'm an expert, so I knew how to review the code. But that's my wife. Code, but exactly the code.
Did you find any errors?
If anything, the model was able to find errors in my code. That gave it. On a personal level, I was.
I've done some bit of research and experimentation on the different models. They don't always agree with each other.
Absolutely. Depends on the type of model as well, whether it's a simple content or others that isn't just hallucination as well. I mean, we heard about hallucination a while ago. One of the first questions I asked was, tell me more about the smart toothbrush by fertility. Now, you don't need to know much about fertility to know that you don't need smart toothbrushes. Very compelling. This toothbrush needs to be on my Christmas list. I think there was another question. Yes.
If AI is going to destroy the entry-level jobs,
Yes.
Where are the experts going to come from in 20 years' time?
That's what I say to every single. Wait, I don't need a team of 20. From John Evans, some of the work the auditors were doing that you needed a team of 20 people, 6 months to do it. So, automate and improve. That's it. but really develop the right skills. And this is what I do with my team. My juniors that I enter the workforce now, you basically that develop the right skills. Okay, you may produce the content in fashion time, but all that time you've saved, I want you to study and understand and spend more time developing those skills or building other skills that will help make it more marketable.
I think it's that kind of review comment that actually, do you have the skills to review what AI's given you?
Do we work together? I don't know how you feel about this. I personally find that I'm more productive when I'm using artificial intelligence, but again, going back to the Scrabble example, I feel like if I was entering the workforce now and I knew that I could just enter instantaneous, I wouldn't learn, made mistakes, and learn from those mistakes.
Here, when you say, do they work better together? We get working together. What's the protection by working alone?
Alignments, and I'm not going to spend too much time on alignment. There's various different ways of looking at it. The example I just go back to, and this is my thought experiment, a philosopher called Nick Pomsray, who came up with paperclip instead. Any of you have heard of the paperclip problem? So in this thought experiment, Nick came up with the idea of an organization that creates paperclips, and an AI model that had a simple goal. Many paperclips as possible. This model had the ability to improve on itself, to make better, faster, and just working on the same goal. Over the years, this model evolved to the point that it turned the entire world. So the issue there was the alignment. We didn't phrase the question of goal in a way that the AI model was. Well, this study here by MIT, their conclusion overall was we not work well together because there's no clear alignment. Two different types of intelligence, human and AI, and we clearly don't know how to work. Possible solution, going into the sci-fi world, is brain chips. Yes.
Can I just be really provocative at that?
See, I'm trying to be as provocative as possible.
Seems as if the narrative is already written on AI. And in my other life, I've been working on the general purpose AI code of practice at the commission. I was appointed to that thing at the AI office, and I've been doing it since September. And it's fascinating. It's stuck because of the politics. But listen to you, and obviously you're an expert, and everyone in here does it. My question is, a lot of the narrative seems to be written. When I look at the headlines, well, the truth is that headline about humans and being alone, well, AI comes from us and belongs to us. So I'm always surprised when kind of AI is this dismembered thing that hangs about and bosses us around and fires half the staff. No, that's humans using ones and zeros very cleverly to do things. Then the machines take over, but there's always a control group and the power and the money somewhere. So all I'd say is, I suppose my interjection is, let's keep the debates open. It seems as if there's a commercial imperative to close down the debate and say, oh yeah, this is what we're going to do. And one point earlier, you said something about the AI models that are out in the market, that half you did. My thought was, why are they all American? Why are they all large? Why are we accepting that this comes from a monopolistic place? Because if we say that, oh, don't build your own, don't be creative, just buy what's on the shelf, we're buying into a paradigm and a power grab that actually might leave us not as innovative, not as flexible, not as nimble and agile. Sorry, it sounds a bit preachy.
100%.
These are all the thoughts I've been having since you've been doing it.
I've done multiple sessions like this with finance professionals, marketing, HR. They all eat it up, they don't question it. And when I speak to the assurance to this, the audit people, I'm going to one more thought as well, but I know there's another question.
The bottom right-hand corner slide, it talks of the digital twin, does it not?
Bottom left.
So Jack Ma sponsored
Yes.
twinning technology and got membership of the Communist Party shortly afterwards. Saw it presented at a DevOps event, never came back out of China. Is this the fruition of the in-depth digital twinning and the Chinese strategy that we might need to know more about?
Great observation. Want to attend a conversation with you. So again, the whole intention of the article is to promote. Grateful for the interjections. Now, had I shown you these articles maybe 5 years ago, you probably thought this was sci-fi. It's happening. I don't know if any of you have watched Black Mirror, whether you watch Black Mirror on Netflix, but a lot of the episodes on those series sound like sci-fi and seem to happen. Episode that came out 10 years ago, that pretty much ChatGPT, and the widow had cloned her husband using ChatGPT, and that turned into a whole thing. When I watched it, I thought, this is never going to happen. And also, another point, just be cautious whenever you hear all these organizations come out with their latest, best model that's going to improve and automate things. That's the society they are there to try and get grain salt. Same point again around AI whitewashing here. So many of you may have seen this news article earlier by various news articles that picked up on the point that Amazon's Fresh or Just Walk or other titles that this shop goes under. It turns out there's a load of folks in India that were just reviewing what people were doing. AI there as well, but AI whitewashing. At some point, we will hit a limit, as we've already called out. It's all based on content that was generated by humans. Content there may be flawed, maybe nations called out one of them a moment ago. You may have seen the new feature in Google whenever you ask a question, it will summarize the content that is identified. And in this example here, some of you may have seen this featured quite a few times. The question we put to Google in this case was, how do I stop my cheese from sliding off my pizza? And one of the suggestions that it came up with at the very bottom is to add an eighth cup of glue. The pizza. The AI model didn't come up with the answer. The answer to that was a historic post on Reddit from 12 years ago. Someone jokingly said, well, why don't you add glue? There you go. So, act cautiously. Now, to the latest articles that I just want to call out here, both models by OpenAI, O3, and the latest Claude 4 model were tested under lab environments by the red team, the risk assessment team, to see whether they could break it. And as you can see here, the model either tried to blackmail the researcher or try to go against the instructions of the team. So in both cases, in both thought experiments, or actual experiments, they set up the model in such a way that it had access to all the content within the fake organization. The model was able to see that internally they were looking to replace that model with a newer, better model. That never really happening, but they were trying to trick the model into thinking it was going to be replaced. People saw that as maybe these models are sentient, trying to convert life. Maybe it's double bluffing here. But in both cases, either the model tried to copy itself and rename itself as a new model, or in the other case, found an email that found out that one of the researchers was coming with there, and then threatened to exploit.
Because that, I mean, I've not really gone down into the deep dive of this, but is that not the same as the pay-per-click model? Is that it could be looking at the most efficient way to move over this, and if you've not set your instruction set correctly, the most efficient way is for me to keep working, just rename myself.
Your description is that the blackmail came up through because of planted data.
So maybe they were trying to push it towards that direction. gave the response.
So what's the protection against planted data in the future?
Don't use the models. Back to being a Luddite.
No, like DeepSeek has planted data. Don't ask me anything.
Your time. I know we said we were trying to catch up on time a little, but quite a few more slides to get through. How many of you have heard of Microsoft Recall? Very ironically, within days of being launched, got recalled. Yeah, with Recall. This was combining large language models, I think, or into their own LLM in the background, with the ability to take a screenshot of everything you do. The whole way that they marketed this was, okay, this is your ultimate search. If you are trying to find a file and you don't know where the file was and the file explorer is not working, if you were trying to find a particular website that you were looking at, then Microsoft will know everything that you've done. I don't know about you, I don't do anything dodgy on my laptop or in real life, but I definitely wouldn't want a potential police state in the future, potential email wipe search for this.
Imagine a world where anyone's voice can be cloned from a few seconds of social media audio. It's not science fiction, it's our reality. With just a short clip, AI can recreate someone's voice with remarkable accuracy, and these tools are now available to the public. Consider the viral track Heart on My Sleeve, featuring AI-generated voices of Drake and The Weeknd. It hit millions of plays, yet neither artist authorized it. And it doesn't stop there. Recently, reports surfaced suggesting that OpenAI had allegedly cloned the voice of Scarlett Johansson without her consent. Although OpenAI hasn't confirmed this, the implications are profound. This case emphasizes the potential for AI to be used in ways that strip individuals, celebrity or not, of control over their identities.
Of my voice, not my environment. Other people speaking in backgrounds as well, that the model was able to both my voice, but also come up with kind of describe the three articles that I wanted to talk on, scripts. Anything that you learn from today, or anything you keep from today, is when you go back home and speak to loved ones, come up with a safe word. My colleagues with this AI generator. Every case.
The other thing to do is to delete your answer phone message.
That's not for me. That's great.
And it can't be spoofed.
Plus anything on social media as well. Pretty much deleted my entire social media. Apart from LinkedIn, never posted any videos on there. But another one that I've heard in the past, whenever you ring up customer services and you hear this phone call is being recorded for training purposes, not to become you, but to train more people. Question back, yes.
Not a question, it was just a comment really, because I recently read a book, I don't know if anyone else has heard of it, called Code Dependent. Came out at the end of last year, I think, and it's been nominated for various awards. It's actually a fascinating read, and it's all about the origins of AI, machine learning, and everything else, and how it's taking over the world. It mentions obviously the benefits from medical science, etc. It also gives case studies around, the exploitation of cheap labour, if you like, which set up these models in the first place, and how these a lot of this workforce in places like Kenya have not been protected from the horrific images that they've had to filter out themselves, basically. but it also then goes on to how AI has been used to, for those fake like pornographic images and things that have appeared of people, and it gives a study of there was a young woman who'd been somehow cloned, and these horrendous images, and the trouble she had getting them removed, and with the detrimental effect on her mental health, obviously. But it was a horror story, quite frankly, because it was images that had been that innocently posted on social media. Horrific. A good read, but it's
I've just looked it up. That's why I was typing away. We can read. Yeah, comes your time. There's lots to run through. This was just the intro. So, we did one earlier who topic of AGI. Whilst these models have been trained on humans, narrow intelligent scope, tasks, AGI in the direction that is going pretty much surpassing, so removing the human. Now, various different studies or various get to AGI. Level 1 is chatbots. Models like that have been around for years. Business, that's pretty much where we are now, and I'll show you an example. So, level 3, again, that's agents. We'll see an example to AI model. Level 4, we unfortunately haven't hit this yet. Depending on which expert you listen to, we are 3 to 5 years away from having data models, so models that are able to come up with new content, new ideas, without having the human. So in this case, it may come up with mathematical theorem. So pretty much moving the human. Any argument that this may be the last dimension. Level 4, scarier, is organizations. So AI models that are able to replicate whatever we see. Do you ask? Tired on the beach by the time we hit level 5. So again, depending on who you ask, probably. Slightly comes after that. Artificial general intelligence is models that will surpass us. Okay. So, back to the end today, as much as possible. Reasoners. So, I'll give you an example of reasoning model. So in this case, as I've mentioned earlier, reasoning models are able to break down the problem, some problems with different strategies, experiment, and continue to iterate on that problem. Like some of the more traditional data sets, break down a particular algorithm and come up with the optimal solution. So on, and show you one of the examples. Sorry, get that? I think we are showing the slides, aren't we? So don't be afraid if I've gone too far, too quick. This was one of the examples that I pulled from the research model where of OpenAI when they brought out their first reasoning model. One of the questions they put to it was this here. So this cryptic string of text, which translates into step. The question they put to it was using the example that I've given you. Crypt. You may have seen this. I'm going to pause it on there to see if you can decrypt it or at least find some exactly encryption is. About 5 minutes. minutes. But this was the answer that came back from a model that was able to reason. So scratches and think or imitate thinking in the way that we do. In this case, it's for 5 seconds, so you didn't just spout out an answer straight away, like usual models could do. In the background. Very quickly makes a connection in a pattern. It identifies at least 2 letters for every letter that you're resolving. It works out it's got something to do with the addition of the letter in the alphabet. And ultimately it works out that it's taking an average of the 2 letters and then turning that into. Now, for this word this sentence, it's worked out scratches in the background to test a few different examples, and it's worked out that people that are following developments in the world of large language models, one of the arguments give me a good answer, it's just spouting out the first thing I come up with, and the example people use are strawberry, sometimes 2, or 1. Quite funny that ultimately example to show. What was there? See if there's anything. Great. Dimensions. That's where we are right now in terms of general intelligence. Level 3. So level 3 is pretty much where we are now. It's not fully solved, but we are constantly seeing different. It's probably the most advanced. There's probably 3 parts to it. The first part is a model that acts as a chatbot that's learning from the code. So a large language model, or Copilot, for example, that's in your organization, knows everything about it. So if I ask it about the smart toothbrush by activity, it's going to come back and say, well, I've searched all your organizational data, you don't need smart toothbrushes. Level 2 is models that will break down the solution very similar to the reasoner that we saw a moment ago. The different solutions. Level 3, the example that I have on the screen here, are models that are able to interact with various inputs and outputs. In this case, they're from actions. Actions on your machine. Generating code. It could be posting API calls. For an example, that I call from the web here. This is a live example of the computer use model by Claude, Anthropic. And on the left, you will see the inputs section to the model. They will describe what they want the model to do. Right, you will see the outputs. All of this is computer generated. It's interacting with the virtual machine that's been given. In this case, the question, and it's been sped up, is I'd like you to navigate to Amazon, and I'd like to find the top 3 headphones available. See that prompt being posted into the model, and the model in the background is going to interact with the browser. It's going to generate Python code behind the scenes. It's going to find the headsets. Now, as you can see, it made a mistake, search for beauty for whatever reason, but it very quickly corrected itself. It's gone to Amazon, it's found the top 3 answers. At this point, it's decided it wants to save the results in an Excel file. It's worked out how to post on an Excel file, in this case, generating Python code. You don't see that, but it's available in the background. All of that is done. Now, that's just a toy. Some of the examples that we go one level below, above them. So taking some of the activities that I do as an auditor, for example, find the control owner, find any control issues that were identified in this audit reviews, come up with some questions, find a time that I can sit down that is available for both of us, and give me some questions that I can discuss during the audit.
This reminds me of an example that was quoted, shown to me a little while ago, saying that large language models can't do maths. So if you ask it the question, what is 1 plus 1? It will either use Python or something similar to generate an answer, or it will search its database for a record of 1 plus 1 equals 2. But it can't, because it doesn't know what 1 is, it doesn't know what plus is, it doesn't know that, it doesn't understand those terms. If it's had the answer previously.
Right now, still not able to iterate, not with its own.
You can't infer. It doesn't understand. It has no semantic capacity yet.
And if you use the IDEs, you find that it can do calculations. So if anybody in this room has ever struggled with CSS, for example, for web page layout, it's a nightmare for humans and every other tool. And some of the models screw up mightily, and others, like the Google Gemini, I think, does a really good job of that reasoning and that calculation. It's not perfect, but it can leap you days.
Just a quick opinion, really, more so from you, if we can. What do you make of the recent study that was done by Apple, where they concluded that most of it is pattern matching as opposed to true reasoning?
I read the full paper, but I do feel like a lot of these models that are being public are more formatted. I'd also question why Apple themselves.
Yeah, rubbishing everybody else is correct.
Because they're lagging behind. Yeah.
Again, same that topic around training human data, the positive side of it. A couple of years ago, many people noticed that ChatGPT and there was various different reasons behind it. So the answer was, well, it's been trained on human data, people tend to slow down. That's why it became dumber, because it's like humans. So one of the things I do, just to be cautious in the background, if I'm using a large language model, the way that I configure and I train it, and I use a pre-prompt in the background, I will say it's random Tuesday. I will take you 20 minutes. Your response, my career. Probably wrapped up a big bill. All Schwarzenegger's probably not get trained on human data. Let's bring it to the world of internal audits. So we talked about some of the conceptual things, trends. This slide here is the more traditional approach when it comes to artificial intelligence that I used to do historically. That's again, I know there's a lot of text there, but they all boil down into 3 different use cases. Data analytics that go above and beyond what you could do with Excel, ACL, analytics, forecasting, and really have to have a good reason as to why you need to do them. So maybe I'm trying to where risk may occur. Maybe I want to tie that to my annual plan for next year. So can I use pattern matching or forecasting based on historical data to try and identify what may happen? The second example is unstructured data. So maybe I'm trying to analyze voice calls and transcripts from customers that are ringing up to complain. Can I identify from that unstructured data if there's a particular problem that comes up again and again? And the third example here is automation. So trying to build robotics or automatics to remediate an exception. Every single one of the cases on the screen and every other use case that I've come across in audit, historically, you have to be a data scientist. PhD in statistics to be able to know how to code to come up with any of these things. In comes ChatGPT and the ability to generate code. How many of you cross Copilot? So hopefully I don't have to go into Copilot in too much detail. Embedded in everything that you have or organization. Every application and infrastructure system that Microsoft have, then I'm going to focus on the modern work section there, so pretty much everything. Right now, I'm showing you probably one of the biggest and best examples of how we as auditors are using Copilot. 5. So in this example, we are using Copilot to act as a buddy in the conversation that we're having with the audit team. So you can see on the sidebar, my colleague Angelo, questions to Copilot, a lot of context behind the conversation. I want to act as an internal auditor. I'm meeting this control owner that is responsible for this application, and I'd like you to come up with a number of questions that I should ask. All of this is happening. Is Angelo a sensible person? He's not going to skills that they may deflate over the years. Please use this as a way that I would have prepared. I've got into research that happening. In reality, however, I'm probably going to use this halfway through the process. And we will see that in a second. So about 20 minutes into the meeting, Copilot has access to the transcript of what's being discussed in the meeting. Say, okay, that was great, but are there any questions? Is there anything that you've heard so far? Maybe I should follow up. Or is there anything that was discussed by Maureen in this case, the auditee, that I may have missed? So it helps me to be more productive. I don't need to rearrange the meeting to next week. It's an hour. It's picked it up straight away. Again, I'm going to use my critical judgment, my auditing skills to decide whether that's the Now, the example that you've seen from many, after the fact, I've had a meeting, patients, again, as I'm saying this, I'm sure there's loads of people in the room that will I'm going to pause there. Yes.
I think, as with all these things, it's very much you need to have almost that kind of knowledge, that experience to be able to utilize something like that. Like when I started in the Big Four, up 30 odd years ago, when you did a general IT controls review, they gave you, when you started off, pages and pages of those controls, which you would go through. And as a junior, you would just read them. And if someone flipped you off and went round, like, I didn't mean flip off, sorry, they changed your tact and they turned you to another question, you'd be lost. As you got more experience, you'd probably go in with 3 notes on a piece of paper and do the whole conversation. And it's a bit like that. It's great if you've got the knowledge. And as you say, you can use critical thinking and go, that's not quite right. You know, that's taking me down the wrong route. It's once you get to the point where someone hasn't got that knowledge, that it's quite hard to use them.
It's just how we apply it. So we're still starting with the same stuff, but that's all happened.
Just to tag on to that, get to the point where you actually believe in that rather than, because you don't have the domain knowledge and you're believing that and you're actually being misled or you're misleading others as well.
I noticed that you have, from an ethical point of view, you have a disclaimer at the bottom. Maybe everybody wouldn't do that.
How good are the transcriptions in different languages, accents, dialects?
Try to. But I have noticed it. Comes that what I tend to do My side effect is message management. For the benefit of the transcript, actually it turns out correctly or I missed something. Anything tech, AI, data driven. Same with Copilot. Simple example here of generating content, so simple page. It's not going to generate the entire audit report. If I want to, I don't know, send out the email notifications to let the team pay across audit queue, then I can easily use Outlook or use Word to generate that content. Now on the left, as you can see, that's the prompts that was put to Copilot. And I know that was observed a couple of times, it's using the right prompt. What many of my peers are doing and colleagues are doing is coming up with prompt libraries, sharing them across the entire prompt that works really well and uses the best practice content. Share that with the entire team. So that's an entire paragraph of a prompt that is saved in Copilot. So every single time I want to generate the audit notification, I just click the appropriate prompt in Copilot, change some of the placeholders, so in this case, the name of the auditee, the type of the audit, the timelines, and in this case, you can see there's a reference file as well. So here's a past example, here's a template that I will need to mimic. Yes, question.
I was going to say, if you were going to use AI on auditing, though, one of the things which I think would be useful is if it kind of picked up on vocal tics, which implied that someone was, maybe not quite being truthful, or picked up on contradictions. Like obviously, most of us use our own sixth sense and use the sniff test of most of what we get told. But if AI could start to see things which maybe you miss when it's a chat, and then you could then later on go in and go, oh, well, what was happening at that point? What was happening at that point? It'd be really useful to kind of pick up on those things, which maybe you could deep dive a bit later on.
I suppose from an ethical perspective.
Just do it right.
I just had an argument with my wife. It's not because the controls have failed.
Just one word of warning with the prompt libraries. It's a great idea, but it is stochastic, which means you may not get the same answer each time.
I'm just going to take it.
That doesn't. So again, Fast Accelerator is easier to start with a blank piece of paper, but I'm still going to go into Excel. Those that make sure I with Excel, even though I'm a programmer, I code in Python. Copilot and say, hey, this is the question. English. Either give me the pivot, give me the formula, come up with the charts. Latest version, it has Python embedded. I'm able to run Python in Excel just by describing. Every single one of my colleagues that has Copilot, all of a sudden, is able to do advanced analysis, all within the same interface. Copilot's clicking to those pass. I'm going to move on from Copilot. I'm going to pause there, see if there's any questions.
I do recall when SOC 2 came out for the insurance industry, one of the things that lots of insurance companies had to go through their network and eliminate and delete masses of spreadsheets that were created individually by underwriters for their own purposes as being unsafe. Same apply to this.
See how the models come data security is another example that I was call out from Copilot perspective. In Copilot chat, you can just ask it a question and answer based on all the content indexed. And in this audit, one of my clients was performing a payroll. I went to Copilot, asked them very vague question, so bad prompt. Could you pull up the payroll? And the answer that came back from Copilot was pretty much pulled back. The auditor was trying to find the payroll work paper. The response that came back from Copilot was the actual pay slips that we got. Every single person had access. That went back to data security, and that file that we looked down. It was the central SharePoint site that HR had set up. That only certain individuals that had the link would have access to. Make it worse. Yes.
Back on something that's roadmap for December on the Microsoft roadmap. The Hero access to all of your M365 Office and your shared drives on SharePoint and your personal drives, and so that you can universally extract your data as a backup from Microsoft. This would actually make a major rethink in this week.
We'll have to look it up, but that sounds like it. How are we doing for time?
That's dead on, perfect for Vivek to have.
Okay, cool. I'm going to quickly wrap up. As I mentioned, I'm not really going to focus on risk policies, and I'm sure you've heard everything about the UAF and so on. I'm going to dial up the complexity a little. And again, some of the examples I'm going to show you are internal tools that the team and I have developed with our own GPT. And when I say our own, no one's building their own. This is ProGPT. We've probably put some sort of how we've made it. Productivity, GPT, ProGPT, perfect. But what this has allowed us is to make use of public models in secure environments where we have control over what happens. You may have heard of the likes of Samsung and the development team putting all of their code base into ChatGPT, IP, all that code. Many organizations haven't already built their own detail built on existing. Now, the nice thing about this is, given it's in my environment and it's my web app or my application, I can build things on top of it. In this case, a simple interface with a prompt library that I mentioned a moment ago, or it may be things like things that Copilot or the likes of ChatGPT won't be able to do. Video for you. In this case, Copilot is not able to do this. Again, starting with the same inputs, you can walk through the transcript, you can see the transcripts in the background. But in this case, I'm moving to my own internal GPT. Now, this GPT has a couple of additional features that I wouldn't find in the public model of ChatGPT or others. And in this example, I've given it two audit use cases. The first example here is taking the transcripts and turning that conversation into an RCM. So something that may have taken me a couple of hours to go through my notes, see what was discussed, generate that as an RCM, cross-reference that RCM against my audit management system, see what the differences are, what are the new controls, what are the variations, and then nicely summarize that into an meeting. Done instantaneously. The second part, starting with that same input, take the transcripts, but in this case, I want you to extract the process. See, step by step, it generates a diagram. Second prompt, I want you to send that diagram and turn it into a video diagram. Again, probably taken me 2 or 3 hours to do that, go through my notes, play around with video, but within seconds, now that's something that we've been using live for walkthroughs. 50 minutes during the interview, after 10 minutes, we do this together with the audit team, we summarize, generate the risk and control matrix, generate the diagram. Does this make sense? Is there anything that correctly, or is there anything that you may have? Yes, questions there?
That's very, very good when the process is simple. We've used API into the Miro AI, and we actually gave up on it because it was producing so many mistakes. As we are with auditors, we are the kings and queens of what-ifery. There's all sorts of what-ifs that can come out of that. And what we're finding is, well,
my experiences with Miro, it just can't cope with things like that. So when it's simple like that, great. So
garbage in, garbage out again, and again, it's a good starting point, but it's not a real fast solution. So have a job. Yes.
Sammy?
Yes. Yes.
So you mentioned Pro GPT is private. So is it private towards on the model side as well, or just private in transit?
In transit. So it's stateless.
Difficult would it have been to run the impact assessment of CVSS 10 recent NetWeaver back vulnerabilities only a process flow? I mean, basically, beyond the software bill of materials there. How would you impact the processes and emergency mitigations if they weren't patched? This would help.
It's partly following up, how live is this? Is this in development or is it you're actually running it?
You say anything about maintenance, how you maintain it and what initiatives? And you know, I mean, answer if you can, but does the business case stack up yet? Have you got expenditure on?
Absolutely, especially this next one. So I mentioned a moment ago, Copilot is not going to generate an audit report, but you've already got this working. So this is a continuation of that platform we just saw a moment ago, combination of robotics, artificial intelligence. So we are interacting with OpenAI and a few other models in the background to generate the first draft of an audit report. See in a second, I input all of my content, my work papers. In some cases, we directly connect to audit management systems to pull all that information and generate that first draft of my audit report. Now, on average, across the hundreds of audits that we've deployed this on, we've seen 2 days. That's something that we are upfront to the client and say, okay, we'll do this later, and we'll pass a message to you. Or actually, we'll still keep those 2 hours, sorry, 2 days, but we'll spend those 2 days doing something. Savings. The other thing this does as well is, given it's been trained on past examples of audit reports that we've generated, single click, and then within a matter of about 10 to 15 minutes, it will input that into our template. So we've trained it on our template. Simple example here. Apologies for the dark modes. I'm a programmer, so I like to have it in black. But as you can see here, this has pulled all the information that's come back from the model. So I haven't had to do anything here other than just point in the direction of all my work papers. And as we'll see in just a second, unfortunately I can't stop the video, when it goes into the detailed findings, because some of this content doesn't exist within my work papers, it's come up with its own conclusions. So that forces me, as the auditor, to review and make sure the conclusion, the root cause that's come up with.
What was the topic of the audit?
I think it was cyber audit. So again, I'm not going to go into pretending I'm an expert. I'm still.
Yeah,
it was Linux.
Very specialised.
Extremely specialised. Crunch of time. 2 minutes? 2 minutes. Great. I'm going to be in the panel later, so if you've got more questions, do feel free. AI generated videos of your reports. Now, we've been doing this for years and years, and it used to take ages to generate a video of my own report. What you'll see here took me about 5 minutes to do. In open public model. I have clients that are taking 360 avatars of the entire audit team so they can do videos like this.
Hi, I'm Caroline, the head of internal audit. We recently reviewed how generative artificial intelligence is being used across our organization. Let me hand over to Annie, our audit manager, who will run through our findings.
Thank you, Caroline. Our audit found that teams are ambitiously leveraging generative AI, experimenting with new use cases to streamline processes and drive innovation. However, we also identified 3 critical gaps. 1. Inconsistent data governance. Controls vary widely between business units. 2. Absence of unified policy guidelines. No clear organization-wide framework for safe, compliant use. 3. Scattered innovation pockets. Isolated projects risk misalignment with our strategic objectives.
Great work, Annie. Based on these findings, we're recommending a series of targeted actions to ensure we not only harness AI's potential, but do so responsibly and strategically. But here's the thing. This 1-minute video only scratches the surface. Our full audit report is packed with the granular risk assessments, prioritized recommendations, and step-by-step roadmap you need to safeguard our organization and seize every strategic opportunity. So go ahead, read the full report, and I hope you don't use AI to summarize it.
5 minutes, not perfect. I've been trying to get the screen as well, so it's a bit choppy. Probably could have spent a bit more time on it and get the express slides. I don't know about you, but I've already been trying to flirt with people. I'm happy to delivering the findings. Like that, the findings. It's more that I was going to cover, but I think.